Hey everybody, welcome back to History Student Reacts. Today we'll be watching Bird Mania, Strongboys, and Tunnel Bears by Historia Civilis. Now, to be honest, I have no clue what this video is about. I've seen a couple of comments referencing this video, but they haven't given anything away, though I suppose you guys like this video in particular. I'm very curious to jump in and see what exactly is going on. If you guys end up enjoying this one, I'd appreciate it if you would check out the Patreon or channel memberships, both of which are linked in the description. Anyway, with that out of the way, let's jump right into this reaction.
So, for the longest time, I've been keeping a gigantic list of weird, random stuff for you.
Okay. Already getting some idea of what we're going into. So this is the Historia Civilis list of stuff that he sees while he's researching for other videos and says, I'd like to include that, but I can't. We're getting all of that in this video.
Use in some unknown future video. As a special treat, I've decided to select a few morsels and share them with you today.
Ooh, a special treat. Alright, Bird Mania. This is perhaps the most obvious of the three sections. Tunnel Bears, no clue. Strongboys, no clue. Bird Mania. Some mania surrounding birds, probably in ancient Rome. This is the one that I have the best guess about, though I'm still curious to see what it is.
First, let's look at Octavian, who would go on to become the Emperor Augustus. He had this weird thing with birds that I've always wanted to dig into. When Octavian returned to Rome after defeating his...
I'm unfamiliar with this. I do know a bit about Octavian and his reign as emperor, as Augustus, but I'm unfamiliar that he had any sort of special relationship with birds.
Chief rival Mark Antony. A man approached him on the street. He had a raven on his arm, and proudly showed Octavian that he had trained it to squawk, "Hail Caesar, Victor Imperator," meaning victorious general or leader. Octavian loved this and offered to buy the bird at a ridiculous price, equivalent to something like 10 years' wages for a normal citizen.
Good deal.
A short time later, a second man approached Octavian. He was visibly upset and claimed that the first man was his business partner and had left him in the lurch after he was paid by Octavian.
Wow.
As proof, he showed Octavian a second bird.
Men in the raven business, huh?
Which had been trained to say, "Hail Antony, Victor Imperator."
Oh, wow.
The two men had been plotting to sell a novelty raven to whoever won the Civil War.
That's hilarious. I mean, that is the sort of money-making scheme that you would expect to see today, or at least in the last 100 years. So, I'm glad, well, maybe I'm not glad, but it's amusing to see that the same kind of schemes were happening all the way back in ancient times.
Octavian was amused and impressed by this scheme, and praised the man for their ingenuity. He made it known that he expected the first man to split his profits with his business partner, and eventually the matter was settled.
I mean, I feel like that could have gone either way. You reveal that to Octavian, if he's feeling bad that day, he might punish you pretty harshly for pulling that two-raven deal. But apparently he was in a good mood that day. I mean, I don't think Octavian was necessarily arbitrarily brutal, though he could be at times. But, you know, still watch out with him.
It didn't take long for this story to circulate throughout the city of Rome. Within a few days, a third man approached Octavian on the street and showed him his magpie, who he had taught to say the same thing.
My
"Hail
goodness.
Caesar, Victor Imperator." Octavian happily bought this bird as well, for a similar astronomical price. Octavian had now established a pattern.
I guess, I feel like by the third one, I'd be saying, okay guys, it's getting a little bit old now. I've got birds that are hailing me as victorious. I get it, it was cool the first time, interesting the second time. The third time, I'm getting a little tired of it.
For too long, he was being presented with talking birds wherever he went. Rome had descended into bird mania.
Wow.
A fourth man was one of the many who decided to jump on this gravy train. He bought what at this point was an extremely expensive raven and began to teach it to speak. Naturally, he wanted to teach it to say Hail Caesar Victor Imperator, but he failed miserably. Instead, the bird got stuck in a loop, repeating over and over again what the man had said as he was struggling to train it. All my work and all my money wasted. Nevertheless, whenever this man went in public, he brought the blasted bird with him. One day, he stopped to listen to Octavian.
I wonder to what extent these tales are true. I think that's the case for a lot of these amusing ancient tales. There is a lot of question to the veracity. I imagine a lot of this is not sourced that closely, but it's still funny to learn about.
Speak. Unprompted, the bird started going off. All my work and all my money wasted. All my work and all my money wasted. Octavian could hear this from the speaking platform and asked the man to step forward. The man explained to Octavian that his attempt to train the bird had been an utter failure and that he was now stuck with the damn thing. Octavian found it kinda hilarious that instead of praising his victory, the creature was telling him that hard work was futile. He decided that the whole thing offered a valuable lesson in humility and insisted on buying the bird at an even higher premium.
Oh, well, that's nice. I think I would have done the same thing. I mean, that is hilarious. And I'm sure Octavian was pretty damn tired of the talking bird gig at this point. So to get one that's gone so badly wrong, that would be a good laugh, I think. Ah, okay, Strongboys. Looks like a dog.
Putting aside Rome's brief descent into bird mania, the Romans weren't bird people. They were dog people. Same goes for the Greeks. The only reason we know anything about how these people treated animals is because writer after writer insisted on producing these manuals on obscure subjects like animal husbandry and horseback riding and hunting.
Fascinating. So we're going to get a look at the relationship of the ancient Romans or the ancient Greeks to domesticated animals. You know, I've never really thought about that, but now that it's on the mind, that's a pretty interesting thing. I mean, humans have had a pretty tight relationship with dogs for a long, long time. Originally, of course, as sort of hunting partners, but they evolved over time into something more than that. So, yeah, this is a very interesting historical question that I know very little about. The domestication of dogs and the role of dogs in different societies. I couldn't really tell you much.
That brings us to our old friend, Xenophon, the Greek writer who left us the best surviving book on the Spartan constitution. In fact, a surprising number of Xenophon's books survive, including one called Synegeticus, which just means on hunting. I read a big chunk of Synegeticus, and take my word for it, it's extremely boring. However, it does contain one absolute gem, which I would like to share.
Okay.
In the middle of the book, Xenophon guides the reader through an excruciating list of things that one should do with a newborn litter of puppies.
And this is basically a good chunk of the work as a historian or someone interested in communicating history. You read through a bunch of primary sources. A lot of it is not very useful. A lot of it is incredibly boring, and you find the interesting and relevant stuff and then take that and include it in your paper, your documentary, your YouTube video, however you're presenting it to everybody else.
Puppies. Then he gets into how one should go about naming their puppies, and helpfully suggests that the name should be short and easily understandable when called out.
Yep, the same principle applies today.
He then offers an extensive list of suggested puppy names, and literally all of them are amazing.
Okay, you know what? I think I'm getting the strong boy title of this section.
Here we go. Psyche, Pluck, Buckler, Spigot, Lance, Lurcher, Watch, Keeper, Brigade, Fencer, Butcher, Blazer, Prowess, Craftsman, Foster, Counselor, Spoiler.
Wow. Okay, a lot of very active words. Clearly they thought of their dogs as, active little creatures. Little warriors, hunters, some words that do make sense.
Hurry, Fury, Growler, Riot, Bloomer, Rome, Blossom, Hebe, Hillary, Jollity, Glazer, Eyebright, Much, Force, Trooper, Bustle, Bubbler, Rockdove, Stubborn, Yelp, Killer, Strong Boy.
I like that
Sky,
one.
Sunbeam, Bodkin, Wistful, Gnome, Trax, and Dash. More than 3 cents.
I think some people call their dogs Dash today.
Centuries later, another Greek writer named Arrian was known to be a massive fan of Xenophon, so much so that he asked people to start calling him Xenophon the Younger.
Okay, wow, that's a whole nother level of standum. That's getting a little creepy at that point.
As president of the Xenophon fan club, Arrian took one of Xenophon's suggested puppy names for his greyhound and named it Dash, or in Greek, Hormy. Arrian copied Xenophon in another way, writing his own book on hunting, and also naming it Synergeticus. Arrian's book heavily features his dog Hormy, and the picture he paints is just so charming.
Yeah?
Arrian describes his life with Hormy. Quote, "While I am at home, she remains by my side and accompanies me when I go out, following me to the gymnasium, and while I am exercising, sits by me. On my return home, she runs in front of me, often looking back to see whether I had turned off the road, and as soon as she catches sight of me, shows symptoms of joy, and again turns and trots in front of me."
I mean, this just sounds exactly like what you would hear today. This is extremely similar to our relationship to our dogs or other domesticated pets today. A really fascinating thing to see. You know, I mentioned how, of course, dogs have been used as hunting partners for a very long time. But what we're seeing here is sort of the domesticated dog in a role that is very similar to the role of domesticated dogs in our society. It's also, like Historia Civilis said, extremely charming. You know, I always like little tidbits like this. Little tidbits that often get lost in the vast swamp of primary sources. Little tidbits that, in the grand scheme, are not that important. You know, we're busy reading about great battles and governments and leaders. Stuff like this is hard to find, but stuff like this, I think it really gives us a connection to people that lived thousands and thousands of years ago. This paints Arrian and his dog Hormy in a way that we can understand. That's very relatable to us. Like I said, this is very similar to today. You can envision these two, well, this man and his dog, these individuals. And I like this kind of stuff, you know? I think it really helps us connect with history and the people who came a long time before us.
If I am going out on any government business, she remains with my friend and treats him exactly the same. Later, he continues, quote, "If she has not seen either of us for a short time, she jumps up repeatedly by way of greeting and barks with joy. At meals, she pats us with one foot and then the other to remind us to feed her. You might be thinking to yourself, this is a lot of personal information for a hunting manual. Well,
yeah, that's true. This is something that you might include in your diary, not in a hunting manual that you intend to distribute to a wider audience."
Well, it is, but Arrian's not done. Apparently, Hormy was a rescue. Quote, "Having been beaten with a whip as a puppy, if anyone, even to this day, mentions a whip, she will come up to the speaker cowering and begging, and will jump up and hang on their neck, applying her mouth to theirs, as if to kiss them, and will not let go until she is appeased."
Okay, he let his dog kiss him on the mouth. That is a subject of much contention even today.
A Greek intellectual from almost 2,000 years ago just admitted to kissing his dog on the mouth. What a world.
Yep.
Arrian closes this bizarre section of his book, almost defiantly in my opinion, as if he knows that this is TMI and that he'll get criticized for it. He writes, quote, "Now, I really do not think that I should be ashamed to write the name of this dog so that it may be left to posterity. I had a greyhound named Hormy, who was of the greatest speed and intelligence, and was altogether excellent."
I mean, clearly Arrian really loved his dog. And I'm sure when this was published, people who read it also thought it was TMI. I mean, imagine if someone today wrote a hunting manual or a dog training manual or something like that and included all this personal information about them and their dog. But what Arrian can't have known is that his book has survived, or at least excerpts have survived, for thousands of years, and now reading it today, it's far more than just some guy including too much information in his hunting manual. It's a real look into ancient life, and, like I said, incredibly relatable.
I find it genuinely touching that Arrian wrote this in some random book, hoping that somebody in the future would find it and remember his dog. And by pure luck, here we are.
And I'm sure Historia Civilis has played a big role in that. I'm not sure if Arrian's hunting guide was well known or is well researched in academia. I would guess probably not. So I think Historia Civilis is doing a real service by bringing this little excerpt to light. And now all the people who watched his video and, videos like mine will know about Arrian and Hormy. That's great. Alright, on to tunnel bears. And the image is of an actual bear. I wasn't sure if we were talking about something else just named a tunnel bear. I guess we'll see.
Let's change gears. I want to close by talking about what, in my opinion, is the weirdest anecdote in all of Roman history.
Okay.
This is found in Appian's account of the Third Mithridatic War, which took place in the 1st century BCE. At the time, the Romans were marching against the kingdom of Pontus near the Black Sea. When they got to the town of Themyscira, the Romans settled in for a siege. By the way, that name might ring a bell, since Greek mythology claimed that Themyscira was the home of the Amazons.
I was going to say Themyscira or Themyscira sounds incredibly familiar, and that's why.
The Romans got to work digging an elaborate series of tunnels, and according to Appian, over a number of days, great subterranean battles were fought under the walls of Themyscira. As the siege dragged on, the Romans continued to make progress.
I mean, this is a strategy that apparently we're seeing back then, and I'm more familiar with the modern/early modern forms of this tunneling strategy. We can think of, medieval and early modern sappers, tunneling under medieval fortresses, setting bombs, trying to explode walls, digging under cities, sappers and miners. Common strategies, I suppose, for a while now, though, of course, they would not have had the same technology at this point, but the fundamental principle remains pretty similar.
And the locals got desperate. Again, according to Appian, quote, the inhabitants cut openings into the tunnels from above, and threw in bears and wild animals and swarms of bees to thwart the workers.
Wow.
Unfortunately, Appian's account of the siege ends there. Presumably, the town...
How many bears could they have had on hand? That's my question. Where did they get all these bears? I mean, you can maybe find a couple in the wild, but first off, I feel like it's pretty difficult to wrangle a bear. And second off, how many can you really have?
Was stormed and perhaps even destroyed. The Romans would eventually win the Third Mithridatic War, and the area around Themyscira would be incorporated into a Roman province. There's a lot we don't know about ancient Rome, but I'll admit that I think about this incident way more than I should. I don't care that it was an insignificant military operation. I wish we knew more. I wish we knew a lot more.
Oh yeah.
It is not fair that Xenophon's book on horseback riding survives in its entirety, while everything regarding these subterranean battles, which were punctuated by swarms of bees...
I mean, look, there are an endless number of ancient sources that do not survive. Some of them we know about, as in we have a reference to a book or a source that we don't have anymore. It's been lost. But there is an innumerable number of these ancient sources that have been lost and we know nothing about. Just imagine the wealth of information and anecdotes. We're not talking about big history-changing information here. I would love to know more of that, but just the little anecdotes that can tell us a bit more about daily life, about specific battles, the experiences of individual people. Even stuff like that is a big loss, and it's a shame we don't have more of this kind of stuff.
And rampaging tunnel bears has been lost forever. It's not fair.
Yeah, I feel that. Alright. I was gonna say I'm not sure if this video is what I expected, but from the title I had no idea what to expect. So my expectations were confused, and that's pretty much what we got. We got a compilation of interesting little stories and tidbits that Historia Civilis has been hanging on to. I think I see why some of you guys have mentioned this one. It's very memorable, also very memeable. Strongboys, I like that name. The relationship between Arrian and Hormy, I think, was the highlight of this video. The tunnel bears were interesting, but we had so little information. And Bird Mania, that was the most normal tidbit. That's the one I could see most likely to be included in a sort of main Historia Civilis video, right? I have no idea where else you would put the story of Arian and his dog, apart from this video right here, which is why I'm glad we got this. So yeah, this was a good time. Some little tidbits on Roman history and Roman life right before we move on from Roman history. As of right now, because obviously Historia Civilis is always working on new videos, but as of right now, this is the last Historia Civilis Roman history video we have. Looking ahead, we have videos of his on the Iroquois, on the trial of Charles I, can monarchs commit crimes? We got a couple of interesting and very diverse videos on a bunch of different topics. But as of right now, we are finished with his Roman history. I'm always waiting for the next Historia Civilis release. His videos are fantastic, whether they're, about the Congress of Vienna, about Octavian Caesar, big battles, or little stories like this one. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'd appreciate it if you would leave a like, subscribe, and check out the Patreon linked down below. Anyway, with all of that out of the way, I hope you guys are having a good day today, and I will see you all again next time. Goodbye.